Imagine someone walked out of your life, vanished into thin air, cold, distant, unreachable. You wonder, are they gone for good? Will you ever hear from them again? You've cried, waited, willed them to return. Maybe you planned calls, messages, gifts, or even guilt trips. And yet silence. Now imagine this. You stop chasing. You step back. You stop pleading, stop texting, stop hoping. You fix your gaze on yourself, become fiercely alive, rebuild your world. A few weeks pass. Then one day, without warning, they reach out. A message, a hey, a longing in their tone. They begin to return. It sounds like magic. It sounds impossible. But I'm here to tell you 99% of avoidance come back when you do this one thing. It's not manipulation. It's not seduction. It's not about playing games. It's about awakening a force inside you, your own internal fire, that naturally draws them back. Because you become the person they miss. So if you're heartbroken, feeling abandoned, exhausted, worn out from the emotional ping-pong, listen closely. This speech is your blueprint, not just to survive the pain, but to reverse the dynamic, to transform heartbreak into your power, to remagnetize the one who left. By one thing you must master first. Let's begin. Owning your value and radiating self-respect is the foundational pillar. Without this, nothing else will work. If you don't believe in your own worth, others won't either. And especially not the avoidant who pushed away. When you own your value, you shift from needing their approval to offering your presence. You become a prize in your own right. This is not arrogance. It is grounded, fierce humility born of deep self-respect. First, you have to recalibrate your internal narrative. All those stories you've been telling yourself, I'm not enough, I'm too needy, I'll never be loved. They are lies you heard, rehearsed, and practiced over time. You must unlearn them. Think of your mind as soil. You've been planting seeds of doubt, insecurity, inadequacy. Now you must uproot them. Pour fresh soil of truth. Water new seeds of strength, self-belief, and dignity. Start by witnessing your wins, even the small ones. Every morning, list 3 things you did well. You got out of bed, you texted a friend, you completed a task, no matter how mundane. Over time, these small acknowledgments build momentum. You train your mind to see competence, agency, progress. This shifts the baseline of how you feel about yourself. You begin knowing internally, I matter, I am capable, I deserve respect. Next, you must refuse to validate yourself through their reactions. Many times we hang our self-worth on whether they respond, reach out, or show affection. That makes you vulnerable to their fluctuations. Instead, you anchor your value internally. Let their response be a welcome bonus, not your lifeline. Cultivate internal acknowledgement. When you feel tempted to text or to hope, ask, if no answer ever came, would I still exist with dignity? Would I still be proud of myself? The answer must be yes. You also shift your posture outward. Self-respect is visible in your energy. When you walk into a room, physical or metaphorical, how do you carry yourself? Straight back, head high, eyes steady. Your body language broadcasts your internal state. If your chest is collapsed, your voice trembling, your eyes seeking affirmation, you look needy. But if your posture is firm, your voice calm and steady, your gaze confident, you look like someone with standards. Others sense that. Avoidants especially are attracted to quiet strength rather than needy weakness. To radiate value, you begin to treat yourself as you would someone you love deeply. You invest in your mental health. You choose boundaries. You speak kindly to yourself rather than berate. You rest when tired. You eat nourishing food. You move your body. You foster a life full of meaning. You become someone worth coming back to, not because they rescued you, but because you rescued yourself. You become the centerpiece of your own world. But be careful. Owning your value doesn't mean being unfeeling or cold. It doesn't mean shutting down emotionally. It means you feel, but you don't collapse into desperation. You love, but you don't sacrifice your dignity. You give care, but you don't give your peace away. That balance is rare. That balance is magnetic. You must also detach from the outcome. When you are hyper-focused on whether they come back, every day becomes an agonizing countdown. When you let go of the result and focus on your own purpose, on being the best version of yourself, you free your energy. You shift from, will they come back, to, how can I grow today? That shift draws people like moths to flame. People are drawn not to need, but to someone who burns bright on their own. A powerful ritual every evening. Reflect on one moment you honored yourself, when you spoke your truth, said no, held your boundary, or focused on your growth. Write it down. Over time, you'll see a patterns. You are becoming someone worthy of reverence. That inner shift creates an outer ripple. Avoidants who recoil from neediness and chase value. Begin to feel the absence of your chase and the presence of your dignity. One of the most magnetic traits is consistency. If you vacillate, sometimes chasing, sometimes strong, you appear unpredictable. But when you consistently treat yourself with respect and never bend your standards, people sense that. They see that this new you is not a temporary posture, but an identity. They notice that no amount of withdrawal or avoidance can shake you from your foundation. That becomes irresistible. Also internalize this truth. People often respond not to what you say, but how you show up. When you consistently live from your value zone, your life becomes proof of your worth. Conversations, meetings, relationships all echo that strength. Even from a distance, your voice, your presence, your energy speak volumes. Avoidants, more than most, feel things before they see them. They sense the underlying truth. You are not begging. You are not scrambling. You are sovereign. And that stirs something inside them. Throughout this transformation, you will face fear, loneliness, urges to reach out, moments of doubt. That's natural. But each time you resist the urge to beg, each time you choose self-honor over short-term relief, you reinforce your value. You train your emotional muscles. You grow. You become stronger, clearer, more anchored. And eventually, the avoidant begins to feel the gravity of what they left. They begin to wonder. They begin to reach. Because they sense in your absence not desperation, but power, and power draws people back. In short, you must internalize your value, broadcast it unshakably, live it daily. Not to punish them, but because you deserve the love you chase. And once you truly become that, 99% of avoidants naturally circle back, not because you wooed them, but because you awakened their respect, their longing, their recognition of what they lost. Detaching emotionally, becoming unavailable, not unlovable, is the second pillar of this transformation. It is the balance between presence and absence, between love and healthy distance. Many people misunderstand detachment as being cold or shutting off emotions. That's not it. True detachment is conscious. You stop making their emotional state your weather system. You stop folding your identity around whether they text, call, or return. You become available in life, never clinging, never collapsing. First, emotional detachment begins in awareness. Notice the impulses, the urge to text, to check social media, to re-engage after a silence. When that impulse arises, pause. Recognize this is hunger, not love. Love is steady, craving is chaotic. Train yourself when you feel the pull, breathe and observe. You don't act immediately. You give yourself space. In that space you ask, is this coming from my purpose or from my fear, from my wholeness or from my emptiness? Often you'll see it's fear. Then you resist, and resisting builds strength. You shift your identity from someone who waits to someone who keeps living. You stop aging your days by their absence. You fill your hours with purpose, creativity, friends, goals. You cultivate relationships, projects, growth zones. You rebuild your world without them in the center. You become emotionally available for yourself, for others, but unavailable for emotional chaos that drags you down. Another aspect, you don't respond immediately to every emotional wave. When someone is emotionally volatile or distant, reacting in real time often plays into the roller coaster cycle. Instead, you build in pauses. You cultivate the discipline to wait, reflect, choose your words and tone. That means resisting the texting at 2 a.m., the defensive reply, the emotional sob. Instead, you wait until your energy is steady. You speak from calm, clarity, not desperation. That gives your voice weight. When you reply from desperation, your words ring hollow. When you reply from strength, even one message echoes. Your emotional boundaries strengthen. You don't allow their coldness or silence to pull you below your floor. You say internally, I will not compromise my peace for someone else's confusion. You don't chase responses. You don't negotiate your dignity for reconnection. You make your peace independent of their behavior. Detachment isn't abandonment. You still care. You still hold love. But you separate your sense of self from their behavior. That gives you freedom. You no longer carry their moods, their decisions as weights. You stand upright even when they lapse away. That inner separation is magnetic. You are not collapsed inside them. You are whole in yourself. There is trauma risk here. As you detach, old wounds may surface, fear of abandonment, grief, shame. This process demands emotional maturity. You may need to journal, talk to a coach or friend, do healing work. You sit with your feelings without drowning in them. You learn to allow sadness, but not to let it consume you. Grief is part of detachment, but you don't collapse into victimhood. Rather, you integrate your pain and turn it into fuel for transformation. Another key: empathy versus fusion. You can understand their fears, their patterns, their protection walls, but you don't merge with them. You don't internalize their defenses or try to negotiate with them inwardly. You stay separate. You hold compassion, but you don't surrender your own boundaries. You say, I see you, I feel your pain, but I won't let it drag me. That clarity emanates strength. Practically, detachment means you reduce your touch points. You may limit contacts, restrict communication triggers, avoid checking their social media, avoid subtle stalking. You create a containment zone. You let silence be your friend, not your enemy. You resist filling every silence with messages or questions. You let absence speak. You allow space for longing to grow rather than collapsing into fill mode. Importantly, you don't punish or manipulate. Unavailability is not manipulation when it is genuine and grounded. You don't do it to hurt them. You do it to preserve your inner capital. If they try to provoke you, blame, emotional lash, guilt trips, you stand firm. You do not retaliate or cave, you stay consistent. That consistency births credibility. They see you don't flinch. You are no longer the volatile, desperate person they knew. You are sovereign, calm. That is magnetic. Detachment builds your mystery. When someone is chasing, the more available they are, the less interesting. The reverse: someone who recedes a bit, holds their energy, lives their life, becomes more magnetic. Avoidants, more than most, feel this tension. They pull and push. When you don't push back but stand firm, they feel drawn into figuring you out. They feel curious. They want to test whether your strength is real, and many come back. But detachment must be aligned with love and purpose. You don't close down, you open from the inside. You still care. You are still open to connection. You just refuse to collapse your heart into empty chasing. You stay open within your boundaries. Over time, detachment becomes your default, not because you're cold, but because you're healed. You no longer live in reactivity. You live in choice. You are emotionally sovereign. That is compelling. That is the very force that allows avoidants who retreat from neediness to return. Because you no longer need them to feel whole, yet you remain available in your own integrity. That paradox is what brings them back. They come not because you chased, but because you rose. Focusing on your growth, elevating your emotional standard, is the third cornerstone. Many people mistake an avoidance return as the only goal, but real transformation is inward. You must shift your lens from, will they come back? To, how can I become someone who won't collapse again, even if they don't? Growth is the only lasting victory. To begin, identify your emotional standard. What is the baseline you will no longer go beneath? What behaviors, demands, disrespect, dismissal will you refuse? Setting the standard means you define what is acceptable in your relationships, how you want to be treated, how you treat yourself. This standard becomes non-negotiable. It's your North Star. Without it, you drift into the old chaos. With it, you become anchored. Now, growth demands action. You must engage in practices that upgrade your emotional fitness. Perhaps daily journaling, reading books on maturity, doing therapy, meditation, emotional hygiene. You challenge your limiting beliefs. When you tell yourself, I'm unlovable, you dissect it. You dig, where did that seed originate? You challenge it. You slowly rewire your mental wiring. You also expand your zones of discomfort. Growth rarely happens in comfort. So maybe you speak publicly, even if your voice trembles. Maybe you approach someone you admire. Maybe you attempt something you fear. These acts build confidence. You stretch emotionally and psychologically. You widen your tolerance for uncertainty. You train your nervous system to hold tension without reverting to panic or collapse. Another layer: creating a mission beyond relationships. If your life is centered entirely on who returns, you remain vulnerable. But if you pour your energy into something bigger, your art, your business, your service, then your emotional stakes shift. You become bigger than one relationship. You have reasons to grow, to live, to move forward. That makes you magnetic. People are drawn to those who have cause, vision, depth. You commit to consistency. Growth is not a one-time decision, it's lifelong. You show up for yourself even when you don't feel like it. You read, you reflect, you challenge your triggers. Every time pain resurfaces, you lean into the lessons. You don't regress to old coping patterns. You notice them, you choose differently. You also build a support system. Growth in isolation is slow and fragile. You align with mentors, friends, therapists, coaches, people who see your potential, hold you accountable, reflect your blind spots. You surround yourself with growth-oriented people. Their energy supports your ascent. They echo your value when your inner critic wants to drown you. Resistance will rise. Growth threatens old identity. You'll feel the pull to self-sabotage, to settle. Those are signals that growth is working. When you feel discomfort, that's the body saying, "We are shifting." Lean into it rather than retreat. Embrace the trembling, serve the wound, break through the limitation. That becomes your habit. As your emotional standard lifts, your tolerance for toxic dynamics shrinks. You no longer accept things you once allowed, stonewalling, silent treatments, gaslighting. You act from a place of empowerment. You don't settle for breadcrumbs. You demand clarity, accountability, reciprocity. That filter wards off manipulative cycles. Only someone aligned with your evolution can stay. Importantly, growth attracts. When people see someone expanding, evolving, gaining mastery, that draws respect, admiration, curiosity. Avoidance may have pulled when energy was chaotic, but when energy is ascending, they feel drawn to match it. They see a version of you they might have missed, and they begin to wonder whether they left something of value behind. Also, growth gives you peace regardless of outcome. Even if they never return, you become someone who looks back not with despair but gratitude for the lessons. You scale yourself upward so your joy, purpose, identity are not hostage to their return. In practice, set a 90-day growth plan. List 3 major areas: emotional maturity, physical health, meaning work. Assign daily practices. Track your progress. Reflect weekly. Notice your emotions, not to punish, but to learn. When frustration or longing arises, journal. What is this teaching me? What unmet need is underlying this? Answer it internally first, not by seeking external repair. When you act from your growth trajectory rather than from their whims, your energy swings. You no longer orbit them. You pull away with purpose. You reclaim your gravity. That energy is compelling. It's not about chasing their return. It's about becoming someone so whole, so elevated, that any return is a choice they make because of their resonance with you, not because you begged. Thus, growth is your secret weapon. It is your shield and your magnet. It is how you rewrite your narrative, break free from past patterns, and prepare your soul for deeper connection. It is how you make the own thing, not just a tactic, but a transformation. You grow, you become, you rise, and as you do, 99% of avoidance circle back, not because they are forced, but because the highest version of you beckons them home. Living with boundaries. Letting respect be the framework is the 4th pillar. Boundaries are not cruel walls. They are clarity, respect, and structure. Without boundaries, you dissolve. You allow chaos, confusion, emotional bleeding. With boundaries, you protect your peace. You teach people how to treat you. You define your relational ecosystem. First, you define non-negotiables. These are core standards you will not breach. How you expect to be addressed, how you allow people to use your time, how you permit emotional behavior. Maybe you refuse ghosting. Maybe you refuse being spoken to in contempt. Maybe you refuse to answer calls after midnight. Whatever your non-negotiables are, they become sacred lines. You must clarify them to yourself first, then you communicate them when needed. Second, you articulate them calmly and clearly. Boundaries are not threats or ultimatums. They are statements. I will respond when you respect my time, or I won't engage when communication is disrespectful, or I need clarity within 48 hours. You say this not in anger, but in assertive neutrality. This shows you are principled, not reactive. You don't negotiate your floor. Third, you enforce them consistently. This is the hard part. A boundary without enforcement is meaningless. When someone crosses it, be it a late message, passive aggression, or stonewalling, you act. You pause communication. You remind them, you exit. You don't lash out with drama. You don't collapse. You simply withdraw in alignment with your boundary. Over time, people learn that crossing your lines has consequences. That builds trust in your standards. Boundaries are love and respect, not just for yourself, but for the relationship. You don't allow the other to disrespect you, and you don't disrespect them. You negotiate behavior while holding lines. This balance is rare. That is why people respect in return. They see you're not someone who tolerates chaos. You are someone who cares, but with clarity. Another dimension: emotional boundaries. You don't absorb their moods. You don't take blame for their trauma. You don't let their emotional disarray become your burden. If they vent, you listen, but you don't drown. You may say, "I hear you, but I can't stay in this tone." Or, "I can support you, but I won't carry your guilt." You maintain your emotional safety. Boundaries also involve time and presence. You protect your schedule. You don't cancel your life at their beckoning. You don't rearrange your world for emotional whims. You show that your life has gravity independent of them. That says, "I am not waiting on you. I live fully." That energy is magnetic and disarms avoidance because they see your presence is not contingent on them. Boundaries may require letting go in some cases. Some people, patterns, relationships cannot integrate your standard. When boundaries are challenged repeatedly without respect, you may need to walk away. That's not defeat, that's clarity. Walking away from toxicity strengthens your self-respect. It tells your system no compromise. Boundaries also teach humility. You may need to apologize when you overstep. You remain human. You may revisit lines when growth arises. Boundaries should evolve, but the principle of clarity must remain. You should never blur your foundational floor. That is your anchor. Consistency is key. There will be tests. They may push, guilt, withdraw, manipulate. That's when your boundary muscle is tested. You must not wobble. You must return to your framework. Over time, your consistent boundaries create safety, not rigidity. They soothe uncertainty. They stabilize relationships. Others feel your presence as reliability, not volatility. When avoidants sense your boundaries are firm, not punitive but consistent, they feel you're someone with integrity. They know they can trust you won't collapse into chaos. They may withdraw momentarily, test the line, but many return once they see you won't budge. They come to respect your inner structure. Also, internal boundaries: you manage what you share when you share, how much you give. You don't overshare when emotionally raw. You protect your emotional sanctum until trust is earned. You reveal gradually. That restraint communicates that your inner world is sacred, not for casual access. Living with boundaries brings peace. You no longer feel pulled in 1,000 directions. You don't leak your energy to people who disrespect you. You uphold your emotional integrity, and that peace fuels your magnetism. People, especially avoidants, are drawn to someone whose internal space is sacred, whose strength is palpable, whose life is not easily invaded. They sense a stable refuge, and that draws them home. Communicating from strength rather than weakness or pleading is the fifth pillar. The truth is how you speak when you speak, and from what state you speak determines much of your relational influence. Those who communicate from desperation or fear often push away. Those who communicate from strength irrigate trust, respect, and genuine curiosity. First, before you speak, you must calibrate your inner state. You check your tone, your energy. Are you trembling with need? Do you feel anxious? Or are you calm, grounded? If you feel shaky, wait. Don't speak from vulnerability when the emotional backup is unstable. Speak from strength, quiet, clear, dignified. This gives your words weight. Second, use clarity over vagueness. Avoidants often detest ambiguity. They respond when things are clear. So instead of saying, "We need to talk sometime," you might say, "I want to meet and have a clear conversation this Sunday at 4 p.m. about us and our needs." You name what you want. You ask for it. You don't hint or plead. Clarity invites response. Ambiguity invites retreat. Third, use direct I language. You take ownership of your experience. You avoid blame and shaming. For example, "When I don't hear from you for days, I feel hurt and insecure," is stronger than "You always disappear and make me feel worthless." You express feelings, needs, boundaries, not attacks. This lowers the defenses. You model mature emotional communication. Fourth, avoid chasing language or begging. You don't add follow-ups like, "Please, I just need one more chance," or "I'll do anything." That communicates weakness. Instead, you may say, "This is what I feel, what I expect. I need clarity. If we can't find alignment, I will respect myself and walk my path." That might sting, but it broadcasts your dignity. Fifth, choose timing carefully. Don't initiate heavy talks when emotions are raging or when either of you is drained. Wait until energy is stable. Don't demand resolution at 2 a.m. Choose times when talking is possible. The receptivity window is real. Schedule when both have capacity. That says you honor the conversation, not force it. 6. Listen deeply. Communication is two-way. When they respond, listen with curiosity. Don't interrupt, don't judge, ask clarifying questions. Reflect their words back. That fosters connection. Even if they respond colder than you hope, you show respect to their process. That builds trust. 7th, speak with purpose. You don't ramble. You don't overload them with your sadness. You pick one main need, one key boundary, one desire. You speak your heart without dumping your chaos. Keep it lean. That respect for their capacity is power. It says, I believe in communication, not emotional flooding. 8th, maintain consistency between words and actions. If you say you'll do something, follow through. If you say you'll back off until respect is shown, you must do it. Trust is built when your actions mirror your words. If you say, I need space, then you take that break. Don't sneak texts. If you apologize, do so genuinely, not as strategy. That integrity is magnetic. When avoidants see someone who communicates firmly but kindly, who speaks truth with calm, they feel a safety, not intrusion. They want clarity, not confusion. They may mirror that energy. They begin to show up more because your communication is not about control, but about honest alignment. Finally, remember, communication isn't your only lever. You don't fire every missile. You pick your moments. You preserve your energy. You let silence say what words can't. But when you speak, let it be strong, clear, calm, and from a place of peace, not panic. That is how you flip the dynamic. And when you do that consistently, many avoidants return, not because they were forced, but because they feel the quiet power of your voice, anchored in dignity. Letting time and absence work their magic naturally is the 6th and often most misunderstood pillar. In a world obsessed with instant gratification, we fear silence. We race to fill voids with messages, calls, emotional surges. But sometimes the greatest communication is absence. Sometimes not reaching out is the most powerful move. Let time ripple, let longing deepen, let absence speak. First, absence is not rejection. Absence is distance with purpose. It's not withdrawing because you're discouraged. It's stepping back because you are choosing clarity over chaos. It's saying, I will give space for me, for reflection, for growth, not out of punishment, but out of alignment. That posture changes the emotional climate. It gives gravity to your presence. Time softens defenses, it reveals truth. People often only realize what they miss when there's space. In the absence of your chase, the avoidant begins to feel the echo of your quiet dignity. The energy shifts. Silence becomes fertile ground. They begin to reckon with what they lost, not in a theoretical sense, but in the gap you leave. That gap is your message. I will live fully, regardless of your presence. But to let time work, you must resist the urge to fill it. Resist contacting, stalking their social media, seeking updates. Resist bargaining with your emotions. Resist collapsing into noise. Keep your shield of integrity raised. Let the silence breathe. Let it whisper the question in their mind. Where did she go? Why is there no chase? What changed? Letting time be your ally also grants you perspective. As days pass, your grief loosens its grip. You begin to see patterns, lessons, blind spots. You gain clarity on whether this person deserves reinvestment or whether you deserve better. You get to test whether your attraction is healthy or needy. You get to reset your emotional circuitry. Time becomes your teacher. There will be temptation. You'll feel the pull to text, to check, to break the silence. That's natural. But resisting each urge strengthens your autonomy. Each day you don't reach out, you reclaim your power. You show yourself that you can hold your center even in void. That confidence is magnetic. Others sense it. Time also gives the avoidant room to miss you. They might be emotionally blocked, overwhelmed, afraid to reach while you chase. But when you step away, they see the reality of your absence. They internalize your shift. They feel the reverberations of loss. Human beings hate emptiness. They may try to fill it. They may reflect on behaviors, on patterns. They may recalibrate. Importantly, absence must be consistent, not sporadic. If you're silent for moments, then chase again. You become confusing. The message becomes muddled. You must commit to the silent stretch. Let it be not a threat, but a posture of dignity. You don't cave in early. You don't break your resolve. You let absence be your statement. I will not collapse. That is a profound statement. During that time, you don't stagnate. You continue your growth, your boundaries, your self-respect, your projects. Absence is not emptiness for you, it's fullness. You fill your life more, not less. That double movement strengthens your magnetism. You are silent but alive. You are distant but elevated. That polarity creates tension, and tension is what draws relationships across distance. Also recognize absence is not forever. It's strategic. You don't vanish eternally unless needed, but you allow space for natural return. When the return begins, you reintegrate with clarity and new boundaries. You don't let the pattern resume full chaos. You maintain what you've built. You allow reconnection only under new alignment. You don't collapse into the old you. Sometimes absence causes them to accelerate. Sometimes they wait the full cycle. Sometimes they never return. But that is not your failure. The goal was never total guarantee. It was activation of your power. Whether they come or not, you emerge with dignity, sovereignty, higher standards. But in the majority of cases, avoidants return, not because of guilt or grief, but because your absence activated their curiosity, their longing, and their respect for the new you. Thus, let time and absence be your allies, not something to fear. Step back with purpose, hold your silence with integrity, live your growth during the space. Let the void echo for them what your words cannot do. And trust that in that sacred space between, many avoidants will return, not because you coerced them, but because you became someone they couldn't resist revisiting. When we look at the arc of this transformation, from owning your value to detachment, growth, boundaries, communication, and embracing absence, you see a path not of tricks or emotional games, but of inner sovereignty. This is not about forcing someone to come back. It is about awakening in yourself the one force they can't resist, your aligned, dignified, radiant self. Too often we think love is about bend and yield. I invite you to see love as strength expressed, not in domination, but in clarity, courage, and self-respect. Through this journey, you reclaim your heart, your power, your narrative. You shift from being victim to being captain. You stop wandering in the fog of longing and instead steer toward your own horizon. You no longer hinge your identity on someone else's presence or absence. Instead, your connection becomes a bonus, an echo of your internal wholeness. And when they return not to a needy shell, but to someone who is full, centered, deliberate, and open. Remember the 99% return not because you played emotional games, but because you transcended the dynamic. They return because your absence begins to speak a truth your presence never could. They return because your silence holds firmness. They return because your life continues without them. Not in spite of absence, but because of it. That is the paradox of true attraction. You give space to be missed without begging to be remembered. Yet the real power lies not in their return, but in your transformation. If they return, wonderful. If they don't, you are unbroken. You are stronger. You have leveled up. You are now someone who won't collapse into heartbreak again. For no one. You have built an identity that cannot be bargained with. And that is victory. Your soul is the prize, not their attention. So stand, breathe, walk into your life with boundaries, conviction, love, and fire. When you live the principles we've spoken, the one thing becomes not a mere tactic, but the expression of your evolved self. And from that place, watch. 99% of avoidants begin again. They feel pulled to what they can no longer take for granted. They feel drawn to the person who refused to lose themselves. They return, not because you chased, but because you became the one who could never be left behind. Thank you for listening with your heart open and your soul ready. I believe in your capacity to rise, to heal, and to magnetize what you truly deserve. May this message serve you not just temporarily, but as a foundation for deeper love, inner sovereignty, and unshakable peace. Walk your path with courage, honor your worth. I look forward to hearing your transformation stories. Until next time, stay radiant, stay fierce, and goodbye.